Well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I will turn it over to Dr. Fisher.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone and thank you for taking the time out of your very busy day and out of your evening to be able to join us today. Our purpose for meeting today is to provide you with further information with our reopening plans and to share updated information with you, to possibly provide some more clarification as we have received feedback from you in our previous meetings and some of the questions raised from our survey. We want you to know that we are listening and that our goal is to be able to work together with you as we make decisions about how to have students return to our campus and when. So I just again like to thank you for being here, and I'd like to begin by also thanking all of our district staff members who have been working nearly around the clock to be able to be prepared with information for you and to be responsive to the many questions that you may have. We're here to work with you as a team, so I want to thank our district staff members for all of their hard work as well. With that, we want to begin by just starting with a few nuts and bolts with regard to housekeeping and how things will proceed through the evening. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Barajas Luis to be able to share a bit of those housekeeping details.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fisher. I want to just translate, quiero traducir porque ahorita vamos a empezar la traducción en el sistema Zoom, pero nos da la bienvenida la doctora Fisher. Nos comenta que hoy estamos aquí para proveer información y quizás contestar preguntas que tienen nuestras familias y nuestra comunidad sobre la reapertura de escuelas. Le dio las gracias al personal que ha trabajado para construir estas juntas y todo el personal que está trabajando para poder regresar a nuestros alumnos a nuestras escuelas. So, primero, unas cosas que tenemos que informarles para poder seguir la junta. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about translating. So the translating is provided within Zoom. La traducción está proveída en Zoom. So les voy a pedir, and Lupe, you'll just have to tell me, we've played with this, so if I have to stop sharing, I'll do that. Pero todos ustedes deben de ver en la pantalla abajo de Zoom, deben de ver el glóbulo, el icono del globo de interpretación. Si selecciona el globo, le va a salir otra pantallita que le pregunta si va a querer en inglés o en español, y va a escoger español. Y de inmediato debe de escuchar la voz de Josefina Aguilar. Gracias, Josefina, por estar aquí traduciendo. Si está en su teléfono, esta es la pantalla que va a observar. Y va a escoger la del medio, Language Interpretation, y le va a dejar escoger la interpretación. So voy a dar unos segundos para que todos los que ocupen traducción puedan entrar. Y le voy a preguntar a Lupe que cómo nos está yendo. And I'm going to answer the question that's in. So I think we're good with translating. Lupa's not sharing anything with me. Oh, she's typing away right now, but I hope she's going to say we're good. Josefina, could you speak so that the translating line can be just double checked before we get started? Okay, I'm going to turn I'm going to turn my screen off and make sure that we're okay with translating before we keep going. So voy a apagar mi pantalla para asegurarnos que tenemos la traducción lista para seguir, okay? Okay,
Josefina, I'm in the translating line, Josefina, but I can't hear you. I can hear you now, Josefina.
Yay.
Okay. Josefina's in the translating line. Norma, we're good to go.
Perfect, perfect.
Great.
I was sharing with Lupe and our team that it feels like we're taking off in a 747. We gotta hit all those right dials because we want to take off. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna go back and share the screen so that we can keep going on our housekeeping items for today. So that was translating. Then the chat function has been disabled. It's a webinar. We expect a large group of community members, staff members, parents, families, students joining us today. So we will be using the question and answer function in the Zoom feature so that we can respond to questions. So please, if you have a question for us, put it in the Q&A item in the Zoom, your Zoom features, and then we will be stopping periodically throughout the presentation to answer those questions. And if possible, we can also answer them in writing as they are coming up. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Fisher.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Barajas Ruiz. We want to make sure that all the technical elements are in place because we want to acknowledge the questions and things that may come up through the night. So thank you so much. And thank you to Lupe for all that she's doing as well. I wanted to just take us back to this graphic. Many of you have seen this, and I just want you to know that this is how we're operating. This is how we're this is what we're working under now, operationalizing everything. You saw that in stage 1, we had to open schools with 100% distance learning because at the beginning of August, we had to shift to online instruction. It has always been a part of our plan to maintain flexibility because we know that the COVID-19 conditions change daily. And so with that, we've always stressed the need to be flexible as we're making decisions. So you'll see that in our graphic here, we started 100% online. And then if you go to the second gray bar there, we continue to follow the guidance of the health department, both from the state and the county levels. And we monitor that data daily and weekly. And then based on that data, we'll take some directions in terms of how to proceed. In our planning earlier this year, we considered opening 100% online and then moving to stage 2 as conditions in our county improved. And initially our thoughts were we would look at stage 2 in January, but there were some changes in our county metrics, which allowed us to make some considerations now as opposed to waiting to January. Those are local decisions. We have not made a decision to do that yet, but I just want to share with you that we've always looked at being flexible based on the information that the data provides for us. We thought that once conditions continue to improve, we would look at what our instructional model would be at that time. And we were always very aware that we would have to be flexible if we were going to bring students back, because there are many, many conditions that have to be met before we can bring students back. So right now, our county conditions have improved, and we're in that yellow box that has the blue a square around it, which means now we need to think about how we're going to bring students back, and if we're going to do that prior to January, and have some discussions around that. So with this model, we were always very clear that we would follow the guidelines if there were school concerns with regard to spread, or if there were district concerns with regard to spread. We've always said that we have to be flexible based on the conditions. So we're not introducing anything new, we're just adjusting where we are in our with regard to schools at this particular time. Next slide, please. So as I've shared, our Fresno County data is shared with us weekly. I look at this information several times a week. And the state of California has moved to a color-coded system. And you can see the color-coded system here. And each county is rated based on the metrics of COVID-19 in their county. So currently, Fresno County is, well, let me start. Previously, Fresno County was holistically in the purple tier, and you can see what the metrics are for each of those tiers. Over the past few weeks, everyone has been working together to be able to mitigate the spread, and we've all been doing what we need to do to get these numbers down. We've been wearing our masks, we've been staying home if we're sick, we've been washing our hands, and we've been doing things to be able to get those numbers down. So 2 weeks ago, we learned that Fresno moved down to the red tier, which was a good thing. And so looking at these numbers, you can see that we were solidly in the red over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually. This meant that the county indicated because we stayed in the red, we were able to consider reopening schools in Fresno County. That was a consideration that was made at the county level, but it did not mean that districts had to open. We were able to open, but we were not required to open. And so as I shared, these numbers fluctuate daily and weekly. They are updated every Tuesday. And today we received updated information. And I received information today at about 1 o'clock that our data has updated and changed to an adjusted case rate now of 7.3. So what was here last week at 6.5 has been adjusted now as of today to 7.3. So what that means is for that metric, the adjusted case rate, that moves us back to the purple tier because we're beyond 7 now based on today's metrics. However, our positivity rate today was noted at 5.2. Last week it was 5.1. Today it's currently 5.2. But that positivity rate still lands us in the substantial or the red tier. So based on our information today, we're actually in 2 tiers because of our current information. However, again, this information will be looked at again on next Tuesday. But what this means for us now, based on the California, the state requirements, if a county moves to a higher risk level category at any time, then the county is defaulted to the higher risk level. So while we had maintained red for the past 21 days, and we were hoping to move down to orange and then ultimately to yellow, we learned today that one of our indicators bumped back up to purple. So that means that we may have to be considered, we will have to be considered in the purple for a few more weeks until both those numbers drop down into the red range again. I know it may be a little confusing, but that's why it helps to hear these, have these conversations more than once. So currently now, our adjusted case rate is in the purple, but our positivity rate has remained in the red. So what does that mean for us? That means that we are still going to proceed very cautiously, and that we will still need to make some local decisions about when to reopen our schools. And we're going to talk about that a little further as we go. I just wanted to be able to share what these numbers mean as it relates to reopening schools in Selma. Each community is different because the data for each community is different. Your next door neighbor's district may be doing something completely different than we're doing because their community and their numbers and everything is different. So we're going to proceed based on what's best for Selma. And so we'll be talking about some things that are under consideration as we go through the presentation. I see that there are some questions. I know, Norma, we spoke about stopping at a point here for me to address any metrics, questions regarding the metrics. Are the questions in the Q&A related to the metrics?
No, not at this time, Dr. Fisher.
Okay. Well, I'd like to continue on with the presentation, and we will be stopping periodically because we want to make sure that we're sharing information with you, and some of your questions may be answered through the process. Okay? Next slide, please. So as we look at those metrics and those numbers and the color-coded system, what does all this mean for us? First and foremost, we are bound to operate under guidelines, very strict guidelines as to how we can, as to the conditions we must make sure are in place before we can reopen schools. And so we use this guide as a basis for responding to COVID cases and also understanding what needs to be in place before we can reopen schools. And what I want to reiterate tonight is that the health and safety of students, staff, and the community is a priority. That's why we have to make sure we're having conversations at the local level so that we can make sure that we're keeping everyone, keeping the safety of our staff and our students and the community as the basis for our decision making. We also know that we need to focus on the educational needs of all students. So we have to look at various options and how we're able to meet the needs of all students. One of the challenges for us over the past 2 months has been trying to plan for lots of different cases and lots of scenarios so that we can make the best decision based on the conditions. And so we're going to talk about all the scenarios that we've been planning for so that we can make decisions to move forward based on the needs of our students and also based on county public health information. It's very important that I reiterate again, we have taken painstaking measures to make sure that safety measures and safety features are put in place at every aspect of district operations. So we're going to talk about those a little bit more. And that we want to make sure that when families transition, when we transition to reopening schools, that our parents and our families have options. And so by providing parents and families with options, that means that we have to be flexible with what we do. But that's our priority, to be able to provide you with options when we decide to reopen. Okay, next slide, please.
And Dr. Fisher, if I may, I think this is my slide, but I'm going to have to, okay, thank you. Before I go on, there's a glitch in Zoom, and so while we're presenting, parents that just came in cannot see the interpreting globe. So I'm going to just stop sharing, let more people go into the translating room. So para las personas que no han podido entrar a la traducción, ahorita voy a apagar la pantalla, mi pantalla, para que puedan ver el globo y volvemos a empezar. So I'm just going to stop sharing so that we can get people into the translating room. Okay, so en su pantalla hacia abajo debe de haber un glóbulo. A veces no aparece y tiene que poner tener su, no sé cómo se llama, su, gosh, I can't even think of it in English, your cursor, sobre la área abajo y debe de salir el glóbulo para la interpretación. Haga clic allí y luego le va a pedir español o inglés, español, y debe de poder entrar. Okay, so I'm just going to give it about another 20 seconds, let everybody get in there.
Well, we need to do that every time.
I think what happened is folks that came in a little bit late missed that part. And again, I think it's a glitch in Zoom because when we're in presentation mode, our families, our parents can't see that globe. So I'm going to go back to
Norma, I'm sorry. I'm able to see it when you're in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. Well, then
There we go. Then she can let them in then, right? And we can keep going.
we should be good. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lupe. Thank you, Dr. Fisher. So what are possible scenarios for Selma Unified? And we've talked in previous presentations about this. And so we're going to talk a little bit about small cohorts, which is really exciting for our district and our students. And then we're also going to talk about the county and the waiver reopening possibility. And I don't know if this is a good place to share, Dr. Fisher, regarding the waiver.
Sure.
Okay, so we just...
Why don't you go through your presentation first so they'll know what the waiver is in context.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then, of course, we're going to talk about what distance learning might look like in a reopening scenario for our district. So those are the three possible scenarios that we're looking at today. Small cohorts, county, or waiver reopening for TK6, and then distance learning. So with that, we're going to move on to the next slide. And Dr. Lingo.
Hello and good evening. So this Monday, we were very lucky to be able to start our first small cohort, which was phase 1 of our implementation. And this came about through the California Department of Public Health as well as Fresno County, allowing us to bring in small groups of students who require more assistance. So as of Monday, we started students who receive special education services at Wilson, Indianola, ALMS, Eric White, and Selma High School. And my understanding is day 2 into this, we have been making great gains and we're hearing more parents wanting their students to come back. All right, next slide. So small group cohorts basically came about, as I mentioned, from the California Department of Public Health, and this was to allow us to provide services, some supports, as well as limited instruction to students, but at the same time limiting the virus transmission. So cohorts can be no more than 14 students with 2 adults, or a configuration right around that, depending on what the student's needs are. So for our students of special education, we may have a cohort that's only 5 students with 3 adults. Again, just looking at those individual needs of the students. Cohorts cannot intermingle or mingle with other cohorts. They need to stay basically isolated, again, to make sure that we limit the virus transmission or the opportunity for that. Adults will only be assigned to 1 group, and adults as well as students will continue to practice their social distancing. As well as at this time, we are also working with our students to help them learn to wear their masks, practice social distancing. And then with this also allows us to bring in our specialists, our speech therapists or occupational therapists for some of those students who may need that more personal connection and can't connect through virtual or online, to pull them out and work with them individually. So right now, phase 1 has started on Monday. We are looking at phase 2 starting on November 2nd. Again, this is going to be based on the local decisions of whether we open schools or when we open our schools, and based on what the board and the decision of the board comes to. So phase 2 is basically going to look at foster, migrant, students with those higher needs, as well as students who have difficulty connecting or are not able to access their education well in a virtual format. So right now, phase one definitely will continue through December, again, going back to the local decisions of when we will be opening our schools. So phase one, and if phase two starts, they will continue to December, and then depending again on those local decisions, if we open up later in the school year. Is there anything that I might have missed from the team? All right, then next slide.
Yeah. You're on mute, Miss Stella. There we go.
Unmute.
There we go.
Okay. Good evening. And I have the next set of slides. The slide here, what is happening with 7th and 12th graders? And I noticed that there is a question regarding secondary in the Q&A, but we wanted to share with you that students at ALMS, Selma High, and Heartland will continue to stay in distance learning until January 2021. Our purpose tonight is to continue to share information and clarity around the options for TK6, but wanted to reiterate that from now until January 2021, secondary will stay in distance learning. Now, as we plan for the entire district, we will be reviewing the secondary schedules, but if any changes are considered and are made, that information will be shared with parents. Again, our secondary sites will continue in distance learning through until January 2021. Next slide. We wanted to just share with you again, the purpose of our meeting today is planning for our reopening for TK6. We wanted just to provide clarity on what the options are, but here are some pictures of our phase one, and know that as we continue to plan, we will be planning for transportation needs, for meals, also for any of the safety resources. As you see there, there's the table and the plexiglass to ensure that we have all of the safety resources needed for our students should we come back face-to-face for our TK6. And ultimately, we want to ensure that all of our students are we're meeting all their academic needs, because we do want our readers back in school, or we want them to continue reading in our distance learning platforms. Next slide, please. Planning for reopening for TK6, our journey in the last month on October 13th at that board meeting, there was a discussion that was held regarding our reopening options. And the board did had some discussion, but as we continue to plan, part of that plan was to send out a survey, and that survey did go out to parents on October 14th. It still is open, and you still have the opportunity to submit your survey through Friday. I believe Ms. Barajas said is open until Friday, 4 o'clock. So parents will still have an option, if you have not, to provide your choice on what options you would like your child to participate in. And the board will see or be presented with a recommendation on October 27th. And at that time, the board may make a decision based on the data that is collected from the surveys on when we might be reopening for face-to-face options and or stay on distance learning. But that decision will be made based on the information gathered from the surveys. Next slide, please. One of the questions, what if I want my child to continue in distance learning and I do not want a face-to-face option? Your child may stay in distance learning. However, based on the model that is chosen, there is a possibility that your child may be assigned a new teacher. We just wanted to share that information. But again, if you choose to stay on distance learning or have your child stay on distance learning and you do not want your child to come back to meet with your teacher, their teacher face-to-face, you will have that option. Next slide, please. The options that we are offering, option one is an AABB model option. 2 days a week, your child may attend school from 8:30 to about 2 o'clock. And again, that time is the possibility. However, what we want to emphasize here is that your child would attend 2 days a week. And during that week, 3 of those days would be independent online work. So your child would only come to school and be on campus face-to-face 2 days out of the week. Learning would still continue, but it would continue on an online platform. Option 2 is a modified AM/PM 4 days a week. And Mrs. Wood is going to go a little bit more in detail in that model, but we are offering option 2, which would allow students in the morning to attend 4 days a week, be on campus live with their teacher, and in the PM, an online option. So the continued distance learning option would continue. For both option 1 and 2, on Mondays, learning does continue. However, students would be engaging with their teachers online. It may be for small group instructions, additional support, enrichment, and/or extra help. So no students would be on campus on Mondays, but there is a possibility that students, if we go with the AM/PM 4 days a week, that students would be on campus Tuesday through Friday. Again, the district would continue to provide a distance learning 100% option for parents who do not want their child or children back at school. Next slide, please. And here's just another view of the first option for TK 6th grade. Again, this option is available only for students whose parents allow them to return to campus and attend on campus, either on a Tuesday and Wednesday or a Thursday and Friday. So again, this blended option or hybrid option would allow students to be on campus 2 days a week. And a possible schedule for that would be 8:30 to about 2 or 2:30. Again, students would only be on campus 2 days a week, either a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Those are if you're in a cohort or group A. If you are in cohort B, you would be on campus Thursday and Friday. Again, online learning would continue 3 days of the week. Monday, all students would continue to be engaged with their teacher online. Tuesday and Wednesday, if you're in a group, you would be on campus, but on Thursday and Friday, online work would continue, and that would continue independently at home without the teacher. Next slide, please. We wanted to just share some of the different options. And again, many students, including those staying at distance learning, could be reassigned a new teacher. In either option, we wanted to share that there may be a possibility that a student may be reassigned a new teacher. Students will remain in the in-person program until the end of the next grading period. We want to keep it consistent, and we want to be sure that students stay within their cohorts. So if an option is selected, students would remain in that option through the next grading period. Both options, again, 1 and 2 Mondays, students would connect online for instruction, support, and for extra help. Lunch and breakfast may be served in the classrooms or cafeteria, and that distinction will be made based by site and by facilities and space. Students will work independently 2 of the 3 days in this hybrid option 1. They would only be on campus 2 days a week. The other 2 or 3 days, they would continue to work online independently without the teacher. Limited classroom capacity due to physical distance requirement will be what determines or what limits the number of students that could come back on campus. And again, a tentative schedule may be 8:15 to 2:30, and that would be a daily schedule on the days that they are on campus. Just like Dr. Lingo, was there any information that I would need to add to the slides regarding option 1?
I don't believe so.
Okay, Mrs. Wood?
Thank you, Mrs. Padron Duarte. I'm going to, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'm going to describe the hybrid option 2 just very briefly. Monday would look very similar to what Mrs. Padron Duarte was describing in the first option. Again, there would be no students physically on the campus. Students would still connect with their teachers online. They would still receive instruction on Mondays, get support and extra help on Mondays. The difference with this model is for the students whose parents want them to physically report, the students would be reporting 4 days a week instead of 2 days a week. They would go to school in the morning. Hours might roughly be 8:30 to 11:30, 8:30 to 12. Again, it might vary site to site. Then in the afternoon, those students who physically reported would then go home and they would continue to work independently. The same teacher would teach the lessons again that he or she taught in the morning, but this group would be the students whose parents want them in 100% distance learning. So this model was in response to many concerns that we had in terms of why does my child have to get a different teacher? They've been with the same teacher since August. We're comfortable with this teacher. This is a model that provides a greater chance to stay with the same teacher. Again, warning would be in-person instruction. And then the students go home and work independently online, where they're doing assignments and again working independently. But the teacher is then connecting in the afternoon with the students who are on 100% distance learning. So those students would be doing their independent work in the morning while the teacher is doing her in-class, in-person instruction in the morning. So again, the one teacher is connecting with all of the students in his or her classroom. And again, this would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The only downside to this is that there is a possibility that more parents might want the in-person instruction than we can allow because of the physical distancing, the social distancing that needs to occur. Next slide, please. So just again, some things to point out with the option 2. Most of the students will be able to keep their same teacher. There's a possibility that all the students could keep their same teacher, but we need to make sure everybody understands that there's a possibility that someone may have to take another choice. And the reason being is, I'll give you an example of a class, a 3rd grade class that normally has 24 students. Well, if 20 of those students want in-person instruction, and that's the choice that you make as parents, we can't have 20 students in the classroom at one time because of the social distancing. Those parents would, all the parents in the classroom would have to be approached in terms of volunteers who might want to select another classroom where it's much smaller, their children could get more individualized attention. But again, right now, the survey results are leaning more towards more parents wanting distance learning. So again, we just have to plan for many different options here. Students could exit the in-person instruction at any time and go right into distance learning, and again, have the same teacher. So if you as a parent decided, I want to send my child to school in person, but then you decide, oh, the numbers in Fresno County, they're climbing too high, I want my child back home on 100% distance learning. That could be a very smooth transition, and you could move right directly back into distance learning. I think we have some things on this slide that maybe should be on the safety slides that we'll cover in just a little bit. I'm going to skip down to the 5th bullet. With both option 1 and 2, again, Mondays will all students will connect online for their instruction, and then get additional support, extra help. Lunch would be a grab and go format where they're coming home with a sack lunch. Breakfast would be served in the classrooms. This again would be 4 days a week of in-person instruction that's roughly a half a day on each day. There will be limited capacity due to the physical distancing requirements that I've just spoken about. Tentative, very, very tentative in-person schedule would be, again, 8:30 to 11:15, 8:30 to 11:30. Again, just depending on each school site and transportation needs, those types of things. Approximately 12 to 2:30 would be that independent work at home for the students, while the distance learning students are getting their direct instruction from the classroom teacher. So if you look at the graph or the diagram over to the right-hand side, again, let's say we have 2 classrooms. Right now, based on the top pictures, both classrooms are receiving distance learning. That's what the kids have been doing since last March. In this model, some of the kids would transition to the in-class instruction, while some of the students would remain on distance learning. And some of the students who are on distance learning right now would then transition to the in-class instruction and not remain on distance learning. Again, chances are that with this model, the students would be able to have the same teacher they have now, whether the choice is in person or 100% distance learning. Next slide, please. And Mrs. Barajas-Reese, I think it's your slide.
Yes, let me just videos here. Okay. And I think there are some questions that we might want to answer regarding the 2 options that we just talked about.
I think, yeah, that would be good.
Yes, so let me go back. I know somebody's asked, how do the instructional minutes in distance learning compare to the minutes for in-person learning? And they didn't identify which option.
With the option 2, it would be 330 minutes per day. We showed that in one of the slides from the previous forum. So with the option 1, where the students are going 2 days a week, again, they would be going roughly from 8:30 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon with in-person instruction. But the premises with that is that we would need distance learning teachers because we cannot have the teacher teaching in person and then having to try to do distance learning at the exact same time. The students who would be distance learning might lose out a little bit with that direct face-to-face, or not face-to-face, where they've got the direct attention of the teacher. So with that, those students who are on 100% distance learning, they may not connect on the computer with the teacher for the full 6 or 7 hours, because that's a little bit too long for our students to be on the computer like that. But some of their work would again be independent learning, research, that type of thing, where they can work independently on projects and assignments. So the number of required minutes, regardless of what we do, the required minutes are the same for grade level. It's transitional kindergarten and kindergarten is 180 minutes. First through third grade is 230 minutes. Fourth grade through 12th grade is 240. But this is a combination of whether it's in-person instruction, face-to-face on the computer, or what we call asynchronous, where students are working independently on projects.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. I think some of the questions that I just saw might be answered as we look at the survey. So we sent out a survey to parents, and the survey is an opportunity for us to get feedback from our parents in terms of, one, we wanted to know, regardless of what opening options the district might have, our parents, which parents are interested in, how many parents are interested in continuing with distance learning. And so this is the first slide, and we're sharing this is as of just this afternoon today. We have a little over 2,000 responses already. Of those, 551 are from 7 through 12. Although we did not ask specific questions about any type of schedule for 7-12, we did want to get feedback regarding distance learning. That would be very helpful to all of our secondary sites. So as you can see, we had 52% of our parents as of this afternoon who are saying that they are opting to remain in distance learning. We have about 48% who said, no, I'd like to do in person. So when those parents select, nope, I'd like to do some form of in person, what the survey is doing is asking parents of these two options, the two options that Mrs. Duarte and Mrs. Wood just described, of these two options, what option would you most likely be interested for your child for in-person instruction? So in no way is it a final choice. It can't be, because right now it's really just gathering information that we can then use for the district to determine which option will be recommended to the board and ultimately which option will be implemented. So it is really just fact gathering in terms of what our community might be most interested in supporting for an in-person instructional model. So this is that slide. Then we asked our parents, of the two proposed models, the model where kids come 2 days a week, I'll start just reading it. For 4 days a week, half day in the morning with independent work in the afternoon, is in blue. So you could see that almost 66% of our parents so far have said, of the two models that you've described, we're most interested in the 4 days a week. And in red are the 2 days, the 2 full days a week, coming either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, and then working independently for about 2 of the 3 days. And you can see that there's 34% of the parents who are saying, I might be interested in that AABB model coming 2 days a week. So again, this is as of this afternoon. This is, so then we asked parents, assuming the district is able to proceed with reopening, as Dr. Fisher started at the beginning of the meeting, there's a lot of variables, including the COVID situation in our community in Selma, in the county, and of course, the state. So assuming that there is an opportunity for us to proceed with reopening and bring students back on campus, we wanted to hear from parents what date would be most optimal for families. And so you can see here that we asked parents for November 9th, and we do have about 30% of the respondents so far are saying, yeah, we'd like to start November 9th. But overall, we're at 59% of our parents have said, you know, we're thinking January 11th is probably the date that we would be most likely in support for reopening and bringing students back on campus. There is a little bit, just a little bit, I believe it was about maybe 3, 4, 5% of parents who said maybe November 30th would be a good day. And then in the green is other, and we've added very shortly after we sent it out, we got some feedback and revised it. And so in the other, what some parents are saying is reiterating January 11th, November 9th, whatever they chose. But we do have some parents that are saying that maybe the whole school year needs to be in distance learning. So again, gathering input from our stakeholders in order to make decisions that will impact every student and every teacher, every staff member in our district. So that's, so the most asked questions that we've received in phone calls and emails is this a final choice? And the response is no. It is not a final choice. Again, this is an opportunity to really identify which of the 2 in-person models we would like to move forward. Then I think both Mrs. Wood and Mrs. Duarte answered that. Will my child have to have a new teacher? And it depends on, right, the model that's implemented in the end. And then is in person starting on November 9th. And again, that's possibly depending on the decision made by the board on October 27th. If I could just be reminded whose slide this is.
This is mine.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I think one of the hardest things that some individuals are grappling with is, why does my child have to have another teacher? So again, in option 1, if some students remain on distance learning, which you saw the results right now, it's 52% of the parents are saying, regardless of any decision that's made, my child is going to stay on distance learning. We respect that. We're trying to honor that. We're offering it as a choice. But right now, in charge of staffing for the district, if some students, if 48% of the parents do want to send their children back for in-person instruction, I have to have teachers in the classroom to teach those young people. But I also have to have teachers who are doing the distance learning. It would be very, very, very difficult for a teacher to do both at exactly the same time. So again, the option 1 is with the AABB cohort on Tuesday and Wednesday, with the teacher teaching almost a full day to a group of students. They can't be doing the distance learning at exactly the same time, because the distance learning kids would not get the same level of attention that the students right there in the classroom would get. The students who are doing distance learning could listen, but they're not going to get the same level of attention because the attention is right there with the teacher in the classroom. So we would have to have distance learning teachers. Those teachers would then be in charge of your students who, as parents, you've chosen, no, only distance learning for my children. They're not going back to school. Just the way that we would have to divide our teaching staff, some being distance learning teachers, some being in-person teachers, your child may wind up with a different teacher with option 1. With option 2, there's a much greater chance that your child can have the same teacher that they have right now. Because again, with that model, with that option, the teacher is going to do the in-person instruction in the morning and then repeat the same lessons in the afternoon, where the teacher then connects with the students who are doing 100% distance learning. The students who are there in the morning are going home and they're going to work independently. and they could still ask the teacher questions and things like that, but the teacher's attention and focus is then going to be on the distance learning teacher. The only thing that could cause a child to have a different teacher is if we have too many students for that one classroom where the parents have said, no, we want in-person instruction, and we can't accommodate that number of students to be able to physically distance in that classroom. So again, we would have to talk to the parents, see if anyone wants to volunteer to a much smaller class, maybe get more individualized instruction. We do have board procedures in place, board policies in place that says, okay, how do you, if we have overages in a classroom, long before COVID, we had this board policy in place. What would we do if we had to move a student? We have students on campuses right now who are visitors who had to go to that school because there wasn't room at their home school. We could look at those students and say, we need to return you to your home school. We could look at students who are on inter-district transfers. They actually live outside of Selma, and perhaps they would be displaced to another school or another classroom where there's room and space where students can receive in-person instruction with a smaller number of students. We could also look at intra-district transfers where students are placed at that school site based on parental request, but they don't actually live in that attendance area. If we look at all those things and we still have too many students for that one classroom for students, for the in-person instruction, then we would look at the greatest needs of the students in terms of, are they receiving special education services? What is the learning loss of those individuals? And the students with the greatest academic and instructional needs would be the ones to remain in the classroom. So this again explains the two options and why there might be possible student movement and reassignment where the students might have to have different teachers. Again, with option one, it's a pretty good chance that your child may have to have a different teacher depending on how many people want distance learning, because again, we have to create distance learning teachers. With option two, your chances are much, much greater to have the same teacher who your child currently has. Next slide, please. Just to reiterate very quickly, we've done a lot in terms of providing health and safety considerations. There's a document that you see on the slide called Industry Guidance for Schools and School-Based Programs. This is only one of many, many documents that we've utilized to create plans and to make sure we have procedures and protocols in place regarding safety. So just to mention a few things, hand sanitizers, located in the classrooms, high traffic areas in the facilities. Foggers are going to be utilized in every classroom to disinfect the classroom surfaces. We've got signage out. You see in the corner there with the little feet on the round sticker. That's actually stickers that go on the floor to remind students to stand 6 feet apart from each other. The students in TK through 2nd grade are strongly encouraged to wear face coverings, including face shields. Students in grades 3 through 12 would be required to wear a face covering. There are exemptions, of course, if there are medical needs or students for some reason cannot wear any kind of face covering. Temperature checks will be done on students and adults entering the campuses with a no-touch thermometer. Employees and students are being required to do daily health screenings prior to entering. We've got protocols in place if there is an actual case of COVID-19. We've got very specific guidelines of what we do, the contact tracing, all of those types of things, and also if there's a close exposure to a case of COVID. And again, if we would work in conjunction with the Fresno County Department of Public Health, if there's a positive case or numerous cases, if there would be a shutdown of a classroom or of a school site, we would absolutely follow the guidelines set up by the Fresno County Department of Public Health. And the next slide is the same information in Spanish. And then on the following slide, we have all the prevention plans all done in the district. We also have a prevention plan for the district office, and it's outlined buildings and facilities, as well as the transportation department. The transportation department has a separate prevention plan because they have to do things a little bit differently. We have to look at their buses almost as traveling classrooms. So they have to be able to socially distance on the bus. They're sanitized and cleaned after each bus run, and then fogged after each route. So they're doing very, very specific things in transportation. So it warranted having their own prevention plan, just like a school site has. And Mrs. Barajas Reese, I think we've got plenty of time to show that little video clip if you'd like.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Let me just make sure. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go. This is our Eric White principal. Michelle Salcido and her staff have worked on a video. We're going to just show a little snippet of it. And this is just something that principals will be working on to provide our parents with some information on the safety measures on all of our campuses for reopening.
Greetings, Eric White families. This is your principal, Michelle Salcido. I hope you are all safe and healthy. I wanted to take the time to review some important and new details with you regarding the opening of our school. I wanted to prepare this video so that both parents and students could see what it will look like when students do return. Schools are allowed to reopen once the county has been in the red tier for 2 weeks. Look like throughout the school day. Custodians have been trained in cleaning and disinfecting protocols. A disinfectant fogger will be used in all classrooms, restrooms, office areas, and communal areas after staff and students have left the area. Parents and scholars, student arrival is going to look different once you return to school. Upon arrival, students will report to one of 4 entry points. The first entry point is on our main entrance, right at our pickup and drop-off area. Our second entry point is off Fifth Street near a gated entry. Our third entry point is at the TK entrance, where only our TK students will enter. Our fourth and final entry point is the playground gate. This is the gate near the playground on Mitchell Avenue, near the weed and seed and playground equipment. At the entry point, students will be checked for symptoms and receive a temperature check. Parents, at this time, we are limiting the number of visitors on campus. So we are please asking that you do not go beyond the entry point and temp check stations. We will have a one-way flow of traffic so that students keep social distance while walking to their classrooms. We will also enforce one-way traffic in the hallways by providing floor decals and arrows in all hallways. Here is a sample of a potential classroom setup. Desks will be placed 6 feet apart and plastic barriers will be placed on desks. All students will be facing forward, and there will be no sharing of materials. Social distancing will continue in the classroom, and all students and staff in grades 3 through 6 will be expected to wear their masks at all times. Students return on a half-day schedule They will have the opportunity to take home lunch for the day and breakfast for the next morning. Lunches and breakfast will be set up as a grab and go as students leave the school site. Children at home each morning. If your child has any of the COVID-19 symptoms, we are asking you to keep your child at home and seek the necessary medical care. While on campus, students will only visit the nurse's office if they have an allergic reaction, bites or stings, burns, bruises, bloody nose, cut or scrape, need an eye wash, or any injuries. If your child is presenting any symptoms, they will be taken to our care room where they will be monitored by a staff member. Parents, you will be called to pick up your child immediately.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. But just a great job from Mrs. Salcido and her staff on beginning to create the visualization for our students, our staff, and our teachers about what those safety features will look like in action once students are back on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So with that,
Okay. I can share what our next steps are, and then we will open up for any questions if we have time. I just want to start by saying that I want to say thank you to those families who've completed your survey. Your information and your feedback is very important to us. As you can see, we've listened and we've refined and we've done some things and made some adjustments because of your feedback. So please, please, please complete your survey so that we can make sure your voice or your opinions and your feedback are considered. If you're having difficulty with that survey, please contact your child's school for help, and they will be more than happy to help you as you're determining your response. We also completed a district staff survey because we wanted to see where our staff, what our staff considerations would be for our reopening timeline and instructional model. And we've received that information, and that information will be taken under consideration as we make our recommendation as well. We will be having another Fresno County data update on next Tuesday. And so we will make those decisions based on the data at that time. As I said, we had an update today, and so there's been some movement in our color tiers today. However, we will get updated data again on next week. As it stands now, we're still able to reopen our schools because Selma was granted the waiver to move forward, subject to the board's conditions, because we've taken painstaking efforts to put everything in place. As you just saw on that video clip, we've done such things across the district. And so we are pleased that we submitted an application to the county to be able to open our schools, because we have many things, we have everything in place that we need. And the county said, yes, we see that you are ready, but that has to be a local decision, and we will make a recommendation whether or not to do that now or whether to do that in January. And that's what recommendation will come to the board on next Tuesday. We'll be looking at whether we're going to determine the start date for TK6, even though we received the waiver, or would it be best to start in in January, district-wide. Also, we will be making a recommendation at the next board meeting as to the instructional model that we will have students return under, whether it's option 1 or option 2. That's why your parent input is very important, because we have to look at everything through the big picture. What I just want to say is that a tremendous amount of planning has been put in place. Systems have been put in place. And we want to make the best decision based on the interests of our students and our families. And I also want to reiterate that no matter what decision we make, it's not going to be a decision that everyone will 100% agree with. And so we've had to come to that painstaking conclusion that everyone's not going to agree with whatever decision we make. But because of the limitations that we have, we can't reopen school on the traditional model. We can't go back to what we had pre-COVID because we're just not under those conditions. So we're going to have to make some adjustments, and we're going to have to make some decisions. And the decisions that we make, we're going to do that based on input, based on the considerations instructionally, what's best for students, and what can we do to minimize the disruption to the routines and the programs that have already been established. So again, our goal is to be as least disruptive as possible, keeping the students safe, and also considering the input of our various stakeholder groups. So at this time, if there are questions that have not yet been answered, Ms. Norma, I'm going to ask if there are any questions that have come through the Q&A that we may not have addressed throughout the presentation.
Yes, and thank you to all of our team members who have been responding while we've been presenting. But there are a few. One question is, what is the hybrid option for students in special day class?
Dr. Fisher, do you want to answer that?
No, you can go. Do you feel fine answering that, Mrs.
I'll let you go. You go.
Okay. With the hybrid option, the AM PM schedules, they would operate under the same terms. I believe that's what we spoke about this morning. Is that correct, Ms. Wood? Special day class students under the AM PM option, everyone would operate under those same terms.
Yes, we had at one point had talked about having SDC come 4 days a week, but that was not taking into account anyone for distance learning. So
Correct.
SDC would have to follow the same either AA-BB cohort in option 1 or AM-PM model in option 2. In order to accommodate the parents who want 100% distance learning.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, we're trying to provide the parents with options so that you have choice. But in being able to do that, there are some restrictions that are, and there are going to have to be some changes made, because there are going to be some special day class students, those parents don't want their children to return. So we have to provide an option for those families as well. So it would be the same thing for our special day class students. AM, PM option would apply to SDC as well.
Okay. Right. Thank you. And the next question is, what does the cleaning and sanitizing schedule look like?
Ms. Wood, would you like to take a stab at that one? Or we know that we have daily our custodians clean our campuses daily, but we've increased cleaning schedules throughout the day, and the high contact areas are cleaned more frequently throughout the day. We also have posted schedules, I believe, on the campuses. Ms. Wood, did you want to try to address that?
Yes, our custodial staff is they're currently marking down when they complete their cleaning schedules. In terms of the fogging, that will always occur after hours when staff and students have left. We are paying classified staff who normally, they're like typically our campus safety assistants who might only work 2 and 3 hours a day. We're paying them additional hours and a higher range of pay to assist with the cleaning, and basically just going around and wiping the surfaces down. Every classroom has a spray disinfectant and
hand sanitize stations.
Hand sanitizer, but in terms of the cleaning surface areas where people can clean in the classroom as frequently as they feel is necessary. So there are many, many, many provisions in place. So there's not one set schedule in terms of that the cleaning's only going to be at 10 o'clock in the morning or only at 12. When we say frequently, we want surfaces wiped down continuously all the time. And we've got the staff to do that in terms of the increase of hours and the increase in pay for those individuals to help with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. How is teacher COVID testing going to work? Fresno County said that is a reopening requirement now.
Do you want me to handle that, Dr. Fisher?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you want me to take a stab at it.
You go right ahead.
Okay. There will be a requirement by Fresno County Public Health Department that when schools reopen, there's a certain percentage of staff who work directly with students that must be tested monthly. And so they've provided a schedule for when that should occur if schools reopen in October or November. We haven't received information yet for proposed openings in January, but there will be testing for employees who work directly with students. We have entered into a contract with some of our local clinics who will be coming on campus to conduct the testing of employees who work directly with students. And again, that requirement engages when schools reopen. That does not apply to small group cohorts at this time because small group cohorts are not indicators of school opening. So the testing would apply to 10% of staff working directly with students, and that would engage when schools open. I hope that answers the question. Ms. Wood, is there anything else that we would need to add with that?
No. So that other than the requirement has not started with the small group cohorts, but starts with school-wide reopening.
Correct. So for us, if there was a determination made to reopen in January, it would give us time to get that up and going and employees tested by a certain time by the end of January is probably likely.
Thank you. I know it's been asked more than once. The question has been, oh gosh, it just scrolled up. Will parents be able to drop their kids off at school at 7:30 like before?
No, there's no supervision at 7:30.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So that one was asked. Somebody asked about after-school programs. Let me get to that one. Will after-school programs be offered in person for the 2 full days if my child attends those days?
Is there anyone that wants to take that?
Stella, can you take that one?
Yes. Discussion regarding after-school programs. We decided that in order to keep everyone safe, that we would keep those virtual because we need to be sure that we do not cross different groups. So after-school programs would stay virtual.
Thank you. And I'm just scrolling. I think we're.
Norma, I see one that's an important one to respond to. A parent has asked that she indicates, I don't think that all parents were clear that teachers would be back in the classroom when the survey was sent out. Would parents have the opportunity to still send their child when an opening date is announced? This survey was preliminary. This is not the final choice. So yes, another survey is going to come out where it will be very, very clear. This is the final choice. We've got to make these staffing decisions. We've got to know the numbers, who's choosing distance learning and who's choosing this instructional model. But again, by that time, there should only be 2 choices, either 100% distance learning or one of the instructional models that's being spoken about. So a survey will come out again, and if you marked one thing on this survey but want to mark another thing on the final survey, you're more than welcome to do that.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. There's also a question about what does SUDA think about reopening? What about the teachers who do not have childcare for their kids because their district is not reopening yet? Has the district considered the number of subs that will be needed if the teachers take family leave?
Okay, so may I have the first part of that again, please, Norma?
Oh gosh, it scrolls up and then I lose it, but I think the first part of it was SUDA. What does SUDA think? I'm trying to find it again, sorry.
Well, rather than responding just from a SUDA perspective, I will respond in terms of an entire staff survey. Just as Mrs. Barajas-Reese sent out a survey for parents, I sent out almost an identical survey for all staff members. Overwhelmingly, the selection is about 80% want a January 11th reopening. About roughly about 11% want November 9th. Again, roughly 4 to 5% want November 30th, and the remaining 4 or 5% want to remain on distance learning for the entire school year. So again, about 80% of all the staff who have responded, and that includes classified staff, certificated staff, confidential staff, and management staff, would like a January 11th opening. What was another part of that question, Norma?
Sorry, I'm still looking for it, but I recall the final part of that was, has the district considered the possibility of needing subs if teachers take leave?
Very definitely, we're considering subs, and I know what the other part of the question was. It had to do with the child care. Parents need to understand that our board has been incredibly generous in terms of offering fully paid leave. We have had staff members who have been either working remotely. Sometimes we can accommodate their work while they're working at home. Sometimes we cannot. There are some positions in the district where their job simply cannot be done at home, and they've been doing a lot of alternative types of work. We're very thankful for that. We're appreciative of what our board has done. But again, some people have been working remotely since March 16th, and they have not been on the campuses at all. Back in the first part of April, the federal government put out two separate leave laws, one of which is referring to the question you're asking in terms of childcare. With that leave, if parents had any kind of, employees had any kind of issues with childcare, they could take that leave, but it was at 2/3 of their pay. The first week of August, the board made a decision that anyone who had a childcare need could fill out a remote work agreement, and they could remain on remote work fully paid with no loss of pay, no loss of sick leave, no loss of benefits. And they have been doing that since the first week of August. Okay, by the time we even consider reopening, or we're wanting staff back, it will be November 9th. So again, if parents are still in that situation, they still have the opportunity to access that federal leave law. It's called the Emergency Family Medical Leave Extension Act, or EFMLEA, and they can still take up to 12 weeks for childcare, but it will be at 2/3 pay. And again, I will say, and I will reiterate that our board has been incredibly generous with all employees, considering that some people have been home since March with no loss of pay, no loss of salary, no loss of sick leave, and no loss of benefits.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood.
There's another important one about notification if a teacher or student tests positive. Can I respond to that one?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so right now the health department has just put out special letters that need to be sent home to family members, to parents, if anyone in the school tests positive. There will be different types of letters that will be sent home. One might indicate that your child had a close contact with someone, which means that they were around someone for more than 15 minutes, that they weren't wearing a mask the whole time, or they didn't maintain 6 feet of social distancing. They might receive a letter that they had a casual contact, which means they may have passed someone in the hallway. Everyone was wearing their masks and everyone maintained social distancing. So the new guidelines from the Department of Public Health indicate that you will get this letter. Our nurses, I just received the copies today. Actually, the nurses have already started the revisions and the drafting the letters, so they're unique to Selma Unified, where you will receive those notifications. Currently, with staff members, all staff in the district are notified if a staff or student has tested positive for COVID. Of course, we haven't had any students on our campus until just this last Monday, but I send out periodically anytime I'm aware and have been given notice that one of our staff members tests positive. I do what's called contact tracing. I trace all of the close contacts and the casual contacts. I send out notifications for that. And a new law will be enacted January 1st that indicates school-wide notification to all staff, even if they did not have close or casual contact. So everyone is fully aware of a case of COVID on the campus. So that's a long answer for yes, we will absolutely plan on notifying people in adherence to the Department of Public Health guidelines.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood.
Norma, there was a question that I wanted to try to address if I could.
Yes,
There was
please.
a question about pivoting to full distance learning in January if the numbers rise and not follow through with the decisions the board might take on the 27th. I'm presupposing that this person is asking if we reopen TK6 at this time, and if there is a spike in cases, would we have to reclose the district and go back on distance learning? That is not what the consideration is with the county public health or the state public health department. If schools reopen, in our case, if we open under the waiver, our waiver has been approved, they will monitor the conditions within a given community and the conditions within a given school district. There will not be a blanket order to close schools holistically like they did in March. They want to take a very targeted response. If a community or if a school district sees an increase in cases at one school, they may close one school. If there is an increase episode of cases across several schools, then they may close the entire district. But it will not be an automatic pivot to closing schools holistically at this point. They're going to take a very case-by-case basis. I hope that kind of addresses the question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fisher. And I think there's a couple of comments and questions regarding face masks, the wearing of face masks on campuses.
Well, TK through 2nd grade, it's highly recommended. 3rd through 12th grade, it is required. There are exemptions for both staff and students. If someone has a medical condition where they cannot wear a face covering, there needs to be a note on file, whether it's a student or whether it's a staff member. There are also exemptions for our students who may experience cognitive difficulties, and we're in a teaching mode with those individuals. Other people may experience anxiety or claustrophobia, something like that. But again, that's a medical condition that needs to be documented with a note. We've tried to provide as many options as possible. So the face coverings could be the actual mask. You know, it could be a face shield. It could be a gaiter, a neck gaiter that's down here and you pull it up above the nose, the mouth, the chin. So we're trying to be as open as possible to that added protection with the face covering.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. There are others, and I know some of us are still responding, and I think Mrs. Wood, there was kind of a follow-up to that in terms of somebody said, you know, will students be reprimanded? And forgive me if you already responded to that, but I know that we will, all of us, teachers, all staff will work with students. We know how hard it is to keep a mask on your face, especially for any, you know, length of time. So it is certainly something that we will work with our students to remind, you know, give gentle reminders, sharing with them the importance of that expectation, the why, and then giving our students just that opportunity, because we know it isn't easy to do. Setting where you're going to be there for maybe a few hours. So I want to
also want to add that some parents have indicated maybe face shields as an option for the younger students, and that would be appropriate if they preferred that to a mask.
Norma, there's another question in the chat. It talks about a close contact. Will the whole class go to distance learning for quarantine? I need to qualify that. If there is a positive case of COVID identified, you know, and with the lab results and everything, then yes, that entire class, we're going to assume that it was a close contact because of the room environment and because that individual is there for much more than 15 minutes. What we have found over the last few months is the health department, even if someone wears a mask and even if someone maintains social distancing, sometimes that amount of time with the person who's positive can trigger the no, you need to quarantine rule. So yes, under those circumstances, if the teacher tests positive or any of the students test positive, that entire class would have to quarantine and would have to go on distance learning. Whether or not the teacher does the distance learning would depend on if the teacher's the one who's sick or if the teacher's still well.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood.
Another question came up, will students be provided masks or face shields? Yes, we have tens of thousands of masks and face shields available. So yes, we do have that available for our students. We've also purchased, in one of the earlier slides that showed a student in our cohort group working with a classified staff member. The student was behind what we call a study carrel. We have a study carrel for all students who are going to be returning, and it's a plastic barrier that they can see out of the sides and in the front. But it's lightweight, so in case it fell over, it's not gonna, you know, hurt the child's head or something. So we have already ordered enough for all of our students.
Thank you, Mrs. Wood. Let me see. If drinking fountains will be covered, will the district be providing water for students?
Yes. Students can bring their water bottles, and I believe they can bring them from home. But yes, we will provide water for students as they if they're on campus. Yes.
Thank you. So we're down to like 5 questions, and I think there's it's a kind of a comment. I'm having a hard time believing about the district's so-called concern about health and safety for students, staff, and community when it seems the teachers are not in the loop of what the district is planning. Why does it seem that I know more about the reopening plans than the teachers? How can I trust that my child will be safe if there is a clear disconnect?
Well, thank you for that comment. It's to everyone's benefit that we communicate with each other. We take every opportunity to get input from lots of perspectives. We've met with teachers. We've had we've had stakeholder meetings with both of our unions. We send out surveys. Our principals have staff meetings to share information. So it's unfortunate if your teacher is feeling like they're out of the loop. It is not our desire that our teachers or any of our staff would be out of the loop. But we do share information and receive information from our teachers and from our teachers union, from our classified staff, and from their union representatives as well, which is why we also include them in the opportunity to give us feedback through the surveys. So we will continue to work to ensure that information is communicated. And if you ever have questions, or if you feel that your teacher is not giving you the questions that you need or responses, I would direct you to the principal, because the principals have meetings with their staff to share ongoing information as well. And just looking at the Eric White video, I think you can see the levels of communication that had to be done, and the coordination that had to happen between everyone, the teachers, the classified staff, everyone working together. And that's our desire.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. And I think that we've got 5, so we could just go through those. Will the district be liable if a child does contract COVID while at school from another student or teacher?
That is a legal question that would have to be litigated, because you would have to have some way of determining where that contract occurred. And so that is those are things under consideration within the legislative body right now, because you'd have to prove that it happened at school. And how do you do that? So that we're not able to answer that now. We certainly are going to take every option and every opportunity to maximize the power of prevention and have everybody working to mitigate that happening. But currently now, that's in the legislative discussions, because they're saying, how do you determine where that happened? Or if a child, or if anyone is exposed, how do you determine where that happened? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. And so if we're number 4, I know this one's kind of been here. The question is, I think, how much material can a teacher cover in a 2-hour day, or in that minimum day? So I saw Stella, Mrs. Duarte raise her hand. So let me, go ahead.
Yes, I believe that there would be more than 2 hours. However, I just want to share that teachers in their planning are considering the standards, and we are working with them, providing some guidance. And I'll give you an example of math in particular. One of our district coaches has provided guidance on what standards we should focus on, recognizing that we don't have a full day to address all of the material. So teachers are being provided with some guidance on what standards to focus on, and we could call them the power standards, or the most critical standards that are identified by the state of California. We've received various resources and documents from the state regarding curriculum and instruction that have been provided to teachers. And we also have our site coaches, our folks that work with our teachers to assist with planning around the expectations for each of the academic areas. So we are taking that into consideration.
Thank you. And I'm responding to one right now. So I think the question is about, oh, there, nobody responded. Okay, so 3 questions. Somebody is asking, I heard of a possible trial vaccine. If so, will it be a requirement for employees and students?
We have no intention of making a trial vaccine mandatory. We cannot do that. That would have to be a directive from a level higher than the school district. But that is not under consideration at this time.
Thank you. And then the other question is, have the desks for students been installed with shields?
I'll respond to that one. It's not an actual shield that's attached to a desk and installed. It's a portable shield. So they're actually pretty cool. They have a handle on the top. And they, if you think in terms of our secondary students who move from class to class, their shield would travel with them, so they're not using a different shield that someone else had touched the period before. For our little ones, they would basically stay on the student desks, and they act as a trifold barrier on that one student's desk.
Thank you.
It's not something that we permanently install.
Thank you. And Mrs. Wood, I think this one is for something as a follow-up to, it says, I'm speaking of TK2 with no mask required. That would be considered close contact. I think it was in response to what you said about students.
And again, you know, I would defer to what the Fresno County Department of Public Health has indicated. And it's 3 criteria. No facial covering by any individual. So that student may not be wearing a facial covering, but again, we're highly recommending that. So perhaps the teacher is, perhaps the other 11 students in the class are. So it's both individuals not wearing a facial covering, not maintaining the 6 feet of social distancing, and that third one being around someone for more than 15 minutes, which of course they would be in the classroom. So in a situation like that, I would definitely defer to the Department of Public Health for guidance.
Okay, thank you. And just one question left. If this is the new norm, why not let your high school students start at the same time as everyone else? Why should our kids fall behind when they're with their studies while other schools have started and embrace the future?
Well, I can say that discussions were raised with our secondary team, and the discussion for secondary was that because of the semester, the end of the semester, and all of the logistics with regard to classes, classrooms, and the class schedules, they felt that the end of the semester would be a better natural time for change for secondary. And that's why the proposal is for January, because it's at the end of the semester. And also the consideration for all that needs to be done in managing bringing over 1,000 students plus back onto the campus. But primarily the teachers and the staff indicated the end of the natural semester break for secondary students.
Okay, so that was the end of the questions, Dr. Fisher and team.
Okay. Well, as we close up again, I'd like to thank everyone for participating tonight, and just know that we're trying our very best and that we're going to make a recommendation based on all of the input that we received and all of the local county data. And I know that I'm going to sound like a broken record, that whatever decision we make, there's going to be someone that's going to be unhappy with it. But we're going to do the very best that we can, and we thank you for the feedback that you're providing us. We're doing the best that we can, and know that we want the best for your little ones as you do. So I appreciate everyone contributing to the conversation and raising the questions, because we are listening as well. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone and wish you a good evening, and look forward to you joining us at the board meeting on next Tuesday. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Night.
Buenas noches.